You are now listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. No more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God, get away.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
I was going to make the noise that a xenomorph makes, but I really don't know what that is, so hello.
And Derek.
Hello.
And on this episode, we're discussing Alien 3, and we all watched the special edition from 2003, which is a little bit longer than the original and has a lot more CG, so we'll be discussing that.
And 2003 CG, too. It's like, that maybe wasn't the best time to update that film.
I don't know. I mean, I think like going back to a movie we discussed previously, Van Helsing came out around that time. And special effects.
And this was on a budget of, hey, we're putting this out on DVD, not this is a new theatrically released movie, too.
Yeah. Like, if you were to redo that today, I'm sure you could do better with, like, basic 3D editing programs. I've seen better stuff on YouTube from people that have no budgets.
Yeah, I'm sure a fan edited that. If they just released the scenes without that, they could make that look killer.
So Fox should do that. But
yeah.
But before we get to discussing Alien 3, we'll discuss it in recent news and things we've been watching. And in recent news, a trailer dropped today, which we're recording on May 8th, for Blade Runner 2049. And this one shows more footage than the teaser that came out a while back. It's around a 2-minute trailer. It introduced the Jared Leto character, which I'm sure Derek is excited about.
But he totally looks like this is good Jared Leto. It looks like it, you know.
He doesn't have a tattoo on his forehead that says robots, and then under it, I make them.
Yeah, like he's not doing a lot in the trailer, but he is not aggressively obnoxious or anything like that in it, which is good.
Then you got gruff Harrison Ford, who that's kind of his default mode.
Yeah, he's been gruff since he appeared on screen.
He was gruff in American Graffiti whenever that came out. Yeah, but then so there's more stuff in it. It looks like it's gonna be a beautiful movie. The soundtrack had kind of like a little, Cynthia type throwback score a little bit. So
yeah, definitely that old, bringing in that old Blade Runner score. And like, honestly, I was so high on the director and Roger Deakins being the DP and the cast. And I was like, all right, awesome. And I hadn't really even thought about the music that much, even though that is such a great part of the original film. Yeah. And then this trailer, when it like starts swelling and some of the original theme starts coming in or what sounds like it. And I was like, oh yeah, the music's going to be awesome in this too, I guess. So it just keeps seeming better and better.
Well, the trailer didn't have enough bwomp in it for me. So no, yeah, it looks awesome. So it's kind of funny because in 2017, there's a new Blade Runner, a new Star Wars, Twin Peaks is coming back.
A new Alien, don't forget.
A new Alien film, which is part of the reason we're talking about Alien 3.
And this one's actually directed by Ridley Scott.
Yeah, and so there's all these things coming back from the past, and you have like popular new shows like Stranger Things, which are very heavily influenced by the 80s and Spielberg and John Carpenter and all the stuff from the 70s and 80s. And so the past is alive today. But at least like with stuff like Blade Runner, it looks like it's going to be a solid film. Now, haven't seen it, don't know anything about it, except from the trailers, but it looks like it's set up to be a good film. And then, so I'm very excited about that. I know we discussed before, like, in terms of how anticipated it is on our list, but there's that's coming out later this year. So there's like, if there's any more trailers or clips coming out, I'm just not going to watch them because no need to. I'm in.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to watch this one, but this is really the first full-length trailer. So I thought, all right, I just want to get a little taste because I'm not watching any of the more Alien stuff because it's so close.
And they didn't really give anything away in that trailer either. So then,
well, I did see one like kind of not necessarily a breakdown, but some birth death movies pointing out something. Anyway, don't read their article. The stuff they point out was something maybe that maybe you could like kind of maybe, I don't want to say guess, but it's not like it's like, oh, I never saw that coming or whatever, but they're like pick out some specific things in the trailer, and it's like, okay, well, kind of wish I didn't read the article now.
Yeah,
You never saw it coming.
I
just couldn't resist it. You know, and I was like, ooh, I just was high on Blade Runner after watching that trailer and was wanting to check out some more stuff about it. So
yeah, I just try not to read anything or watch anything. It's like, too, in our current culture, everybody's obsessed with breaking down every element of everything and trying to find spoilers. And like, I just want to watch the movie.
The article even says that. Like, I know we don't like trailer breakdowns, but check this out.
And it's not a trailer breakdown. We're just breaking.
And then I read the comments on Facebook, and it was the first one was like, I really wished I wouldn't have read that.
Yeah, so I will not read that.
Yeah, do not read it.
Yeah, so so there's that. There was more teasers released for the new season of Twin Peaks. I know before I mentioned one on the last podcast that was just like exterior locations. The new one, it's around the same length. It's not very long. It's like 30 seconds. Shows a couple of characters. And, I mean, like it shows somebody in a grocery store, somebody just like standing on a street, somebody sitting at a desk, somebody sitting on a park bench. Like, no story elements whatsoever. You just get to see some of the actors.
Yeah. That's also one I'm avoiding just because it's so close at this point.
Yeah.
Even if it shows nothing, I'm like, I just want to go in, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that, it may, like, I would assume it's footage from the actual show, but it was just interesting seeing the characters because some people look not that different. Some people look a bit older, which makes sense because it came out like almost 30 years ago. So, so that teaser's out. We shared all that stuff from our Facebook page. You can watch it there. Then Alien Covenant, which is coming out soon. Some reviews, the review embargo lifted for that. So those who were able to go to screenings have been posting reviews. And the Rotten Tomatoes score for it currently was actually pretty decent the last time I looked. It was in the, let me check real quick. But yeah, so some of the reviews have been coming out. A lot of them say that it kind of balances between Prometheus and Alien films. And I guess the balance it strikes between that determines how much people like it. And I know, like,
yes, some of the things that kind of, I guess that I was kind of expecting based on those initial trailers and stuff was that, you know, for some people it's a plus, but they said basically it's kind of the same old tricks, you know, as far as a lot of the things you've seen before, and maybe more of it being as just being like straight scares and stuff. And it sounds like that can go either way. Like some people are totally happy with that, and other people are maybe bored with that because they were wanting something more. But honestly, like, and again, I didn't want that. I want something more. I may love it though. You know, it may be enough for me, absolutely. But I think it's probably not the worst idea to maybe this direction, because I mean, you think about the last time an Alien film came out that wasn't like Aliens versus Predator. You know what I mean? Like that was like what, 20 years ago almost. So the younger audiences.
Because when did was it Resurrection? That
97 came out? Or something like that.
Yeah,
so like
20 years.
Yeah, like 18-year-old kids now, like this may get them into Alien, and they may have not actually seen, you know, the original films. So they may be totally like blown away by some of the stuff, even if it's things we've seen before, scenes played out similarly or whatever.
So currently there are 42 reviews, and it's at 79% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Like, I would like for it to be a better version of Prometheus as far as like them exploring different things and finding more about the, you know, roots of humanity and stuff. But that to me, that part of Prometheus was interesting, and like it just, you know, maybe more if it had been not centered inside like essentially like a catacomb, that would have been a little bit nicer, or maybe more wide open. So hopefully this will give a little more exploration to the roots of humanity. What are the guys that they were?
The engineers.
Yeah, maybe we'll give a little more about the engineers. But if it's more of just a straight horror film, I think that they've already given, like, you know, Alien worked because you didn't really understand where everything was, you know.
Yeah.
But now we're in this more of a fully fleshed out universe where we understand where they came from. Not really necessarily, we know the xenomorphs are kind of like, almost like a chemical warfare type weapon, like they're derived from that. So it'd be more interesting to have more of an exploration of that to me than it would be just to have a straight creature feature.
Yeah, that's a good point. You kind of, where do you go from here? Because I guess part of the story of the original one was the fear of not knowing what this thing was and kind of figuring things out. And now that you kind of know so much of the backstory, it's like, what story are you revealing as far as the xenomorphs go? If people are just getting chased around. I mean, and again, it sounds like it's good. You know what I mean? It sounds like the movie's good.
Well, I think it's just that it sounds like it delivers what you would expect based on like some of Prometheus sprinkled in with some of Alien. Like, so that's if that's what you want, it sounds like it's going to deliver. But if you wanted, like, I still think that, like, I liked Prometheus overall, but I think that there was a version of that movie that was a sci-fi classic versus just a decent enough genre flick that some people like, some people hate. Some people really hate it, which is interesting. But
there's
I
just
enjoyed
certain
it.
qualities about that I like really like. Like the visuals, just some scenes and like independent moments in that film I really love. So. I get if people are turned off by certain things, but there were some really high points in that film for me.
The main thing that people have a problem with is that the scientists or characters in the movies act in illogical ways and aren't very intelligent. It's like, have you seen the current state of the world right now? Like, a lot of people in very powerful positions are making very dumb decisions every single day.
One is an alien film outside of Aliens where more than one person survives in the end. And if Ridley Scott can do that, I think that would be nice, because it's kind of like, don't give me the final girl again.
Well, don't give us Alien,
the final 3.
Don't give us a version of Alien or Alien 3, or don't do that again. But we'll review that movie when it comes out. So I'm still excited to see it.
Yeah, me too. I'm always more excited about getting something I didn't know I wanted, or something that I didn't expect. And it sounds like this is kind of what you would expect. So it makes it less exciting in that regard.
I guess too, though, this is kind of like me putting my X-Men glasses on,
like your Cyclops,
your ruby tinted visor that will block out.
I got my ruby tinted visor and I don't see any red flags. I think, that maybe some of these, because I've seen some people they reviewed, just be on Twitter and different stuff. They've reviewed this movie early. And they love everything alien related. And it's like, well, how much can I really trust you? Because I love everything X-Men and X-Men Apocalypse, but I still think it's a good movie, so I would give it a much higher rating than anybody else on this podcast. So it's like me seeing them give the review of that movie a grade. It's like, it didn't matter if it's literally Ridley Scott pooping on a plate in front of them. They're going to give it a good score. That's what worries me a little bit. So it's like...
Well, I think, too, though, there's a lot of people that were sour about Prometheus, so they hate that movie so much.
But, yeah,
or
this went the next...
Or this didn't have to do a lot to satisfy them. So because they didn't get another Prometheus, they're like, hey, who knows? You
the perception of one thing I hated, so I like it.
I mean... Perceptions of films change over the time. We've seen with like Alien 3 even, the special edition of that, like people have... more came around to that than originally. So, I'm glad it's reviewing well, though. You know what I mean? Because I was probably less excited for it before, and now I'm like, okay, good. At least it's a solid genre film, and even if that's the best we get, then that's fine. You know what I mean? Like,
you know what? All I really care about at the end of the day, as long as Predator is better than this, I'll be happy.
Well,
because I'm a Predator guy. I'm more,
Hey, I'm an Alien guy, but with Shane Black directing and working on that script, I'm all in on Predator.
But the one thing and this is just real quick about this, one thing that I think makes Predator easier to be good is it is just a genre film. The problem with Alien is they try to get to... I'm trying to think of the right word here.
Well, high-minded or high concept.
Yeah. They give it too much of a high concept. It's very high-minded. So with Prometheus did that. So it's like, okay, you can't go from that extremely high-minded concept and then go back to Dum Dum Land.
See,
you know,
but like I think that I won't spend too much more time on this point because we're going to get into the movie later. But like Aliens, I would prefer to Predator.
See, I wouldn't.
But both of them are still like, you know, really high up my list of like sci-fi and action movies. Like they're really high up, but yeah, but
See, I think Predator is a great 80s film, whereas like I think Alien and even Aliens, that I feel like that holds up better for me. And part of it is just kind of maybe the tone and the creature design, you know.
I mean, have you seen Carl Weathers' bicep though?
Well, the cast in Predator, as far as not, can't even think of her name now, is better. But Sigourney Weaver, but
I don't the Alien.
Opinion.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The cast. I was just watching Alien 3. I was thinking about even Alien Resurrection. Like the casting in the Alien films has been really strong.
Well, like yeah, you look throughout the series,
like
they've
very
had,
very great character actors.
They've had Harry Dean Stanton, they've had William Hurt, Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, Paul Reiser, surprisingly, in a film, which you know, I think too. Like you look at that and you look at the new Alien having Danny McBride. I think a lot of times comedians can do action and drama well, just because comedy I think is, you know, so hard to get right that
James Franco's in it too.
Yeah, James Franco. So yeah, so we have to spend too much more time on that because we'll be reviewing that movie soon, Alien Covenant. But one last bit of news before we move on. It seems like there actually may be a third Hellboy movie because Guillermo del Toro had done a Twitter poll and said if it got over a certain number of responses that he would have a meeting with the creator of the character, Mike Mignola, and Ron Perlman. And then they got the amount of votes. They had the meeting and said that it wouldn't be happening. But then Mignola revealed on Twitter that there will be a third movie that's going to be directed by Neil Marshall and starring David Arbor as the character, and he was the sheriff on Stranger Things. So that movie sounds like it might happen. It just will not be with Guillermo del Toro and Ron Perlman. So I'm assuming it would not be a follow-up to the second film they made or a relaunch of the franchise or something. And I still haven't seen confirmation that it's not an animated film either. But
I mean, yeah, they did say it's R-rated, and that can be. But I think they would explicitly said animated. Because Neil Marshall, he hasn't done any animated stuff yet, has he?
Well, too, that's the main thing that was like a impediment for the Hellboy movies was the amount of money it took to make it.
Yeah, well, too, like I think I was hearing that Del Toro wanted a lot of money to make that third one as well. So, you know, they may just want to go smaller scale and kind of, because it is hard once you spend a lot of money on, you know, a film and its sequel, it's hard to kind of go back and kind of make something on a smaller scope and impress audiences, as with Alien 3, you know, like compared to Aliens, like how are they going to step back and say, okay, we're going to scale things back because, you know, movies are always bigger and quote unquote better. But I like Neil Marshall a lot. Like The Descent, I haven't watched it in a very long time. I mean, probably since right after it came out, but I remember thinking that was one of the strongest horror films I had seen in a long time.
Well, then he did a bunch of TV like Game of Thrones and Hannibal and other shows.
Yeah, Doomsday. I went to theaters to see that because like Descent. Doomsday was like a Mad Max Escape from New York style film. And I was kind of thirsty for that because, of course, that was like way before Fury Road. And I enjoyed that quite a bit. Dog Soldiers, that was all right. Centurion, I thought that was okay from what I remember. So I'm glad to see him get back into making films because he was just doing so many TV shows.
Yep.
What's this Skull Island Blood of the Kong? Is this a sequel to Kong Skull Island?
I know there's been discussion about the Godzilla versus King Kong movie coming out, I think in a few years, but
I don't know what this is, but it says a prequel to the original story, Skull Island Reign of Kong. Short. It's a short film.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So that's all of the news. Now I can briefly go through the things we've been watching. Not mostly this week. Just had time to watch TV stuff. Caught up on Fargo season 3 and Better Call Saul and what else? I watched some of the Handmaid's Tale, that Hulu series about.
How's that?
It's interesting. Like, I'm enjoying it so far. It's just a dystopian future where religious cult takes over because the majority of the population becomes barren. So then they make women. They create this society where the women who actually are able to bear children have to like have to have children with like guys who are generals and all this stuff. So it's something that was written like 30 years ago, but it's pretty relevant now with the way that things are and the way that some people view women and things like that. And then it ties about religion stuff, and it's shot well, and it's interesting. So I'll watch the rest of that, and it'll get renewed for a second season because it's been like I think Hulu's biggest hit out of their original stuff so far. But I found that entertaining. Didn't really have a chance to watch much else because it's, like I said, caught on the TV stuff, and I've been working on editing the short film we shot last weekend. It's just going to been making some progress on that. So once we get that done and get an idea of like what we might submit it to festival wise and stuff, we'll let everybody know like when it's coming out. But it'll be coming out by October for sure. Just not sure on the specifics beyond that. But anybody else watch anything?
Derek?
I took off this week because we're from Louisville, so we have the Derby and stuff going on that just happened Saturday. So I took a week off. Watch a lot of different stuff. I didn't watch much horror stuff. I was caught up on some movies I really wanted to watch. I watched Fury. What else did I watch? Casablanca. I watched Heathers, which I love Heathers because that's on Netflix again.
Yeah.
So I watched that. Saving Private Ryan, which I might have said that.
I haven't seen that since around the time it came out. Like mid-90s is the last time I saw that
Or did it
movie.
come out like 99 or something?
Was it that late?
Saving Private Ryan, I believe so.
Came out in 98.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, it was late 90s.
And then I'd watched Into Watch. And I just kind of, because I caught Fury on the other day. It was on History Channel or something, so I just bought it. It was off of Amazon for like $10 or something. But I was really pleased with Fury. It was really good. And then got into Saving Private Ryan because my girlfriend had never watched Saving. She's a little bit younger than me. So she had never watched Saving Private Ryan. It's like, well, you have to watch that. And then you go back and watch it and you remember like it's a very, very, very good movie.
One, too.
And Ted Danson's in it.
It's one of those movies too where like it's kind of easy to forget now in the age of big budget blockbusters today with all the CGI and stuff. And that movie, of course, had CGI in it because there was big battle scenes and stuff. I'm sure it was all just to touch things up. But stuff like that ages so much better than a lot of effects-heavy movies from those eras. Especially stuff that has a lot of like CG monsters and stuff. Like, so you watch something like Saving Private Ryan and it stays visceral, and I don't think that the effects age enough to take you out of it or anything because it still looks really good.
Well, one thing is I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Not that, and I say that is because if you haven't watched this in almost 20 years, like I haven't, because I haven't watched it since it came out in VHS, and you go back and you watch it, there's so many cameos in it that in itself makes it
It's not really
enjoyable.
cameos, just like actors before they got big.
Man, now I don't even know because there are some big actors that are in there that are like Ted Danson's in it, and that's just kind of a cameo.
Well, it's not like a cameo. I don't
Hey,
know.
Ted Danson in a war movie.
Yeah,
But then, like, it
it's
had-
one of those things.
It had like Vin Diesel in it
But
before
I'm
he
not
was
even
big.
talking about
and
them. Yeah, I'm not talking about them. You'll see other guys in the film that are just very small bit roles for like, it might be maybe 5 minutes. You don't even remember they're in there. So it is kind of fun to go back and watch that. He's like, oh shit, I didn't realize all these people were in there. And of course you got Tom Hanks. So, Tom Hanks is one of the best. So, but have y'all watched Fury?
No, I'm not.
It's pretty awesome. Both of the one thing I like about Saving Private Ryan and Fury is movie. It shows you like the actual horrors of war. It doesn't really glorify it, and some people might watch and think it does glorify. I don't think it glorifies it, and I think it makes you it's like I wouldn't want to be in that.
So, if you watch Fury and End of Watch, those are both movies directed by David Ayer, who directed Suicide Squad.
Which Fury was good, and End of Watch was really good. Suicide Squad was one of the biggest pieces of shit that I've ever watched, and I want my money back for having watched.
I'll be watching that. I'm gonna finally watch Suicide Squad. It's on HBO now.
Please don't. Just
Oh,
go
you haven't seen it before?
Look,
No.
you know what? Me and Sean will come over to the baseball bat and hit you in the nuts like 3 times, and it would save you like the whatever time length.
There's a really great breakdown of I don't know what the title is, but it's like masterclass editing. Suicide Squad. It's basically like clickbait title, but yeah, it's a great breakdown of kind of
all the
where they
editing
go-
mistakes they made, because I saw that video.
and not even just editing, just kind of like some thematic things.
Yeah.
And that is editing because maybe they took it out. But yeah, also just maybe how the pacing of how some of it is cut and like
Well,
the things they decide to focus on or not focus on.
They
Yeah, it's
cut
great.
into
Great.
they cut into scenes the wrong way. Like they don't establish a shot properly, and they move in like they don't give you a good like layout of the geography and like where you're at and do things that make sense. They just kind of like jump cut into stuff. And
Yeah,
have music
and
every
like
7 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, watch that film and then watch that video breakdown, just because it is a great dissection of what not to do, which is sometimes better than what to do.
Yeah. One thing I will say about, I didn't know that he directed all 3. I didn't know he directed Suicide Squad, but it is funny you watch him direct Into Watch and Fury. And it's like, those are good movies, but I feel like the studios probably kept their hands out of it a lot more than they do with Suicide Squad.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give him a mulligan on that because it's like those 2 movies were really good. So I feel like Suicide Squad being what it was probably had the studio all over, which everything I read kind of indicates that is what happened.
Yeah, well, especially with when they cut that trailer, and then so they got the people who cut trailers to cut part of the film, and they blended the 2 versions together. And yeah, that's seemingly what made that film a big mess.
Yeah. But I highly recommend Fury. I mean, it's pretty good. It's funny because it's good Shia, because Shia LaBeouf's in it. And it's like, if he could just give that type of performance in every movie, he'd be a really great actor. And it's not that he's a bad actor. He just gets kind of Nicolas Cagey almost, but in real life, not in the movies.
Yeah.
Well,
so
it's
he,
like social statements
goes off
and then like his film fest where he watches his own movies for like 2 days straight and like cries and stuff. Yeah, he does a lot of performance art things.
But I would highly recommend anybody that hasn't watched Saving Private Ryan, because you want to watch a real horror movie, go watch the first like 30 minutes of that movie. And it's just as gory as anything you'd ever want to watch.
Yep.
Anything else, Derek?
I don't have, no.
You guys didn't make it out to see Guardians?
I'm going to see it this week. I didn't have a chance to this weekend.
It was one of those movies that I changed my mind. And I'm just going to wait till I can rent it to watch it.
Yeah. I really like that first one a lot, and there's been some people that like this one better. There's some really good moments in there. I think the last act of it is very strong, which normally doesn't happen in Marvel films. But honestly, I think I easily like that first film better overall. And it's kind of a bummer because it's almost like an easy decision for me. So in that first one, I liked a lot. It wasn't like, oh, this is the greatest superhero film ever. I don't think I'm as high on this as a lot of people. And honestly, I mean, Nicole wasn't either. She was like, yeah, I like the first one better. Like as soon as it was over with. And I went to the restroom and she said everybody coming out was like, yeah, that first one was better. And it's, I don't know, they do some contrived things to fit the music in there sometimes when it's like, just play the music. You don't have to give me a reason for you playing the music here. We know that this music can just be part of this universe now. But there are some really good moments, and like I said, the last act is really strong, I think. And that's kind of some of the best parts of it. But it almost feels like a smaller film. It almost feels like it would be like an episode of a TV show version or something. I don't know why. It did not feel on the same scale as far as just making you like really kind of get a feel for the universe. Like I feel like they go a lot of different places in that first film. There's a lot of good world building in that. And this one, it feels very much like it just feels smaller in that regard. Like you don't see as many places. You don't get a feel for kind of how the Guardians are viewed in the universe now, because they saved the universe or the galaxy in that first film. And, they bring that up a little bit, but you don't really see how they've changed. They're still just a team. And I don't know. And not that I was necessarily like looking for that. It just seemed like something I was kind of missing when it just seemed like this is just another episode for these characters. Now, I saw somebody point out like, oh, this is the second act of the story or something like that. And if you do view it as the first film and the second one as like one piece, then I see that working a lot better. I think some of the jokes maybe didn't land as much as consistently as they did in that first film, but kind of viewing it as one piece, I think that maybe works better because there are a lot of things they pull from that, with Quill's father and all this stuff that really kind of end up paying off in this film. I would recommend seeing it for sure. But yeah, I was kind of hoping to really be blown away, and I wasn't blown away. I had a good time, and I laughed quite a bit. But yeah, other than that, let's go ahead.
I say this would be the first superhero movie probably in 2 or 3 years that I would not see in theaters. Like it, I don't know if I'm getting burnt out on that a little bit, but I think I don't know. I mean,
Kurt Russell's in it. You should go see it just for Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell, Derek.
He is great in it. Yeah, he's awesome in it.
Those things like, man, like, I got Spider-Man coming out in 2 months. Then after that, what else we got? You got Wonder Woman in between, which I've heard that's not looking as good now because I've heard a bunch of negative stuff about that. And I don't know, there's you got Thor Ragnarok, and it's like if I had to go see any of those, I'd probably take Thor over this. And it could end up not being good as well. But it's like I think with Marvel, and I think X-Men is going to do this next year. When you put out 3 movies a year that are all somehow tied together, it gets to be a little much.
Well, too, though,
this is very independent. I think they don't even get into like. There's, I don't know if y'all have heard, but there's plenty of post-credit stuff or like.
There's like 5 or something.
Yeah, they get it. And they maybe get like some of them are just gags, and I think some of them kind of lead into stuff a little bit, but most of it just feels like little gags. Like it's not too heavy, but honestly, like there's no. Like this is like could just be its own universe based on kind of what goes on in the film. Like it very much is just okay. This is what's happening in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and you're not really concerned with tying this in or there's no. I mean, normally the Infinity Stones like is a big thing. No, it's just this is this story, which I also do like. And yeah, I mean it's. Like I said, the ending is really good. I've seen some people say it made them cry. Not me, but but it is good. Like it's good in that type of way where it's like, okay, there's actually something to this. It's not just, oh, they beat up the bad guy and that's the end,
Yeah, I mean, I still want to see. I just didn't have a chance to this weekend. As we mentioned, it was Derby weekend, which is a big deal in Louisville, Kentucky. But
the other thing I'd say, I watched a little bit of Raiders. I watched my nephew, and he was enamored by the action scenes, but as soon as it was over, he's like, let's watch something else. But he's only 5. And so I watched another Jane Levy film. You guys, from Don't Breathe and Evil Dead. A little film she did called Monster Trucks.
Oh, real quick. I'm glad something about that reminded me. I also watched I Don't Feel at Home on This Planet Anymore.
I Don't Feel Alone in This World.
Yeah.
World. Yeah. Very long time. Very, very great movie.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah.
Because actually Courtney was one that chose to watch it, and it was just on Netflix, and we watched it, and it was. I'm not trying to cut you off. I couldn't remember the other movie.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good movie.
It's a great movie. It's really fun. It's different. I love Elijah Wood in it because I know people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to high school with guys that acted just like that. So it's funny to see that, like, on there. So I would highly recommend anybody who has Netflix and hasn't watched that. It's definitely very much a genre film, but.
Well, it's written and directed by Macon Blair, who is in Green Room and Blue Ruin. So it feels similar to that milieu, and even kind of like
it definitely does.
even kind of Coen-esque a little bit in terms of a lot of it's like the consequences people experience for doing certain things and the ripple effects and all that type of stuff.
But I would definitely recommend to watch that movie.
Yeah, I do too. It's like a great little crime thriller, but it's not, it's not about the two leads aren't like professional criminals. It's like everyday people getting wrapped up in something. Yeah, that's very good.
And ninja stars. So go watch it.
Yeah. And it's awesome that it's on Netflix. So if you have that, you can just watch it, not wasting any money. So back to Monster Trucks. That was only 99 cents to rent. He wanted to watch Monster Trucks even though he's seen it before. I was watching that and I was like, this film looks pretty good. Like visually, it was like really
$100 million plus movie, I believe.
Well, I mean, the cinematography, and I was like, who shot this? And it's the guy who shot the first Spider-Man. He did Forrest Gump, Castaway. So yeah, it had some muscle behind it as far as that goes. And, it's got Rob Lowe, Danny Glover. I can't think of his name, but Officer Dangle from Reno 911.
Oh, Thomas Lennon.
Yeah. So, it's a monster that gets in this truck and then they drive around in it. So, 99 cents, it wasn't bad for a kid's movie, I guess. And then only other thing I watched, not a movie, but I went to see a magician with my little cousins on Oaks night. And because I mentioned that to you guys, the only thing it reminded me of was, real quick story, when they were really young, like my oldest cousin, she likes magic. So that's why we got tickets for it and took her there. I got two cousins. But whenever she was probably like maybe 5 or 6, and my other one was about 3, they had a joint birthday party because their birthdays around the same time. My grandparents hired a magician, and it was like this really old guy and his wife, and they were kind of like bickering and arguing in front of the kids and stuff. And anyway, they pulled out like a dove, and all the kids were like, ooh, this big white dove. And he puts it in a brown paper bag and then pops it.
Job.
And feathers went everywhere, and all the kids immediately started crying. So then he was scrambling, and they finally eventually brought it back out. But apparently one of the kids, he had saw my uncle, they said they saw him a year later, and they're like, yeah, our kid, he's finally getting over therapy for that dove that he thought got killed. Yeah. So that's what I did aside from work. And yeah, I basically was at the mercy of doing stuff that kids wanted to do for the past few days. So the only thing I saw was Guardians, really. And then I watched a little bit of TV shows, but that was it.
All right. So now I can move into our review of Alien 3, which I was trying to remember when this movie came out, the year, because I remember watching it, and it was 1992. So it was a few years after Aliens, which came out in 86, I believe. So a little bit of a delayed sequel. It came out because Aliens was 86, Alien 3 was 92. And I remember seeing this movie, and I didn't see it in theaters, I saw it on video when it came out. And so this one was directed by David Fincher, not Ridley Scott, not James Cameron. So it was David Fincher. Before he was a household name was Seven and all the stuff he's done since then, like Zodiac and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and all the different stuff he's done since then. But this was when he was relatively early on in his career, and he'd done music videos before this. And did anybody watch? I didn't watch it this time. I've watched it in general. The documentary that is on the Alien quadrilogy set about the making of Alien 3.
Quadrilogy.
Yeah. I watched it. Yeah, I watched it before too. It's probably one of my favorites, just because just because it gives you a clear picture of actually what happened with this. Because you always, you read stories like this went wrong. Fincher was mad at the studios. It turned him off from, doing this, possibly doing studio features or whatever. But yeah, it's probably, like I said, one of my favorites, even though this film isn't I like this movie, at least the special edition, but even though it's not one of my favorite films of all time, it's one of my favorite features because it is pretty honest. So I watched as much as I could this time. I probably watched maybe half of it.
What's funny is that, so Michael Biehn, who was Hicks in Aliens, like when he actually found what they're gonna do with this movie, what happened to his character. I think he said he had like a heated phone call with like David Fincher and was like, going off on him and stuff. And then he got more money, or he got either more or the same money.
He said nearly as much.
Yeah, for his just a picture of him being shown in the movie netted him as much as he made for the prior film. Which, yeah, so too, I guess, full spoilers on, this will, like, our first discussion will start out, it's going to spoil what happened in Alien and Aliens, because this is Alien 3. And I don't think we need to hold spoilers for this. I think we can just kind of discuss them as they come up, because this is a movie that follows a pretty predictable blueprint for the most part in terms of what you'd expect out of an Alien film.
Like they all do.
And I mean, not the ending. Like, I think the ending is very strong in this film. I mean, granted, if you're gonna care about watching Alien films, now's the time to catch up with Alien Covenant coming out. But yeah, obviously, just full spoilers, because really there's not a lot to talk about as far as story goes, aside from like the first 45 minutes and then like the last half hour.
Yeah, I mean, and two, so we all watched the special edition, which is like 2 hours and 24 minutes versus the theatrical cut is 1 hour and 54 minutes. So a little bit longer version, some differences between the two. And I guess, too, just before we get into all this, the brief synopsis from IMDb. After her last encounter, Ripley crash lands on Fiorina Fury 161, a maximum security prison. When a series of strange and deadly events occur shortly after her arrival, Ripley realizes that she brought along an unwelcome visitor. So this is a movie that...
Which is Jonesy.
Yeah, so too, the main thing, so you look at these movies, Alien was, a very good, like, haunted house movie in space. And there was, instead of a ghost, something like that, there was the alien. They showed it sparingly, and they showed it effectively and all that. And then it ends with Ripley surviving and being found. Then Aliens expands on the mythology a little bit and shows you the queen alien laying eggs and all that stuff, and you get more characters involved, and it's a little bit more of an sci-fi horror action film. And then, so as a kid, I watched Alien and Aliens because they had like action figures and toys and like the power loader toy and stuff, all that. So I watched that movie, and Derek, you watched that too, right?
Which one's that?
Well, it's like Alien and Aliens. You watched those too, right? I'm trying to remember how old you would have been. Because I watched them before Alien 3 came out. So
I'll say this. I remember Aliens.
Actually, you would have been too young.
I remember watching Aliens a lot growing up. I do not remember the original Alien, watching it until I was like probably 15.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. So you were too young then, because Alien, I think by the time it came to like the VHS when it ran, it was like 93 or something. So you'd have only been like 3 years old. So, but yeah, so like, I remember watching Alien and then Aliens. And when I was a kid, I liked Aliens more because there's more going on and there's action and all that stuff. And then I saw Aliens and I was so excited for Alien 3. Because it's like, oh man, they're going to do even more of this stuff. And, they're going to have, more of the military stuff and all these vehicles and all this stuff. Then I saw Alien 3. Granted, I was probably too young to see it when it was like 92 or 3 or whatever. So I was like 8. But I watched it. And then I got done. I was like, I hate this movie when I was like 8. Because I was like, it did the exact opposite of what I wanted. And a lot of the reviews at the time reflected that, where people said, it's just kind of a retread of the first film without expanding on the universe in the way the second film did. And, I mean, at the time, I was very disappointed. So I really haven't watched it since then. Because at the time, I didn't really care for it. And then I watched Alien Resurrection, like the 2000s or whatever. But Alien and Aliens, I watched a lot. So this is the first time I've watched this movie since like the 90s.
Wow.
And
how did you feel coming back to it?
I didn't hate it like I did when I was 8.
Yeah.
But I also, when I was watching it, I was like, man, what? Like, it's 2 hours and 24 minutes. Like, for the amount of story they had, I mean, granted, that's the extended edition where they put footage back in. Like, it's decent enough, but like, I probably would not. I don't go back. I don't think I'll be going back to that one. Because I would just go back to the first one or Aliens. I wouldn't really go back to this one, to Alien 3. But like, I mean, Sigourney Weaver is good in it as always. And then they do have a good supporting cast. Like there's Charles Dance in it. If you see him and he seems familiar and you can't point where he's at or where you know him from, it's probably from Game of Thrones where he was Tywin Lannister.
But he's not as good as Ted Danson. So,
and then there's other people that show up in the movie, like Charles S. Dutton as Dylan. He was really good. Like there's a lot of good people in this movie. It's just that I think for a lot of people, what you expected versus what you got was so different. And when you read up or watch a documentary about like the development of that film, there were versions of Alien 3 that did take directly off from the James Cameron stuff and kind of follow the blueprint that he'd kind of thought about, where you would have like a third film that had Hicks as the lead, and then like the fourth film brought Ripley back, or the third film had them two in it doing stuff like. So a lot of versions of this movie that existed, and then they got pared down, and Rennie Harlin almost directed it. So who made he did the Die Hard sequel, Die Harder. The second one he did Elm Street 4. Did a bunch of stuff in the 80s. He was going to direct at one point.
And then Vincent Ward is the one they interview in the documentary, where they pulled a bunch of his story elements from, for the final film. And I don't remember. I don't know what actually kind of broke him off from it, but
I think it was,
yeah.
I mean, just reading IMDb, I think it was that. So, like, they eventually scrapped the ideas of just kind of carrying over the James Cameron stuff and the Aliens universe and expanding it out more. They decided to kind of like bring it back down. And initially, it's going to be that she would land on a planet where there were monks, and it was like a wooden planet where everything was wood. And then I think that the realities of the production cost to make that, and thinking about the sense it made for that to even exist in the first place, made them rethink that. So then they kept the bones of the script and then just changed it from a planet with like monks and churches to a prison planet with prisoners who had a religious bent to them. So they kept a lot of the outline stuff, but didn't really keep the story.
And thinking back, because I was like watching the special features again while doing some work on my laptop, I think Vincent Ward had signed on to do the film when they agreed to do the wooden planet and monks, and then they came back and said, well, what about like a mining colony and all this stuff? And I think maybe that's when he said, okay, this isn't what we signed up for, and he may have walked away at that point. But yeah, and then Fincher was like, hey, let's do a prison, which I like. I mean, I like the idea of the prison. Obviously it was very rushed again, because they talked about how he was shooting the film with no script, and it was his first film, which is like insane, but they don't lean into it a lot. They touch on it quite a bit, but I feel like, there's just not enough there to really kind of mine that opportunity of them being prisoners. Like they're just basically kind of, typical prisoner characters, so you've got to watch, but I think they could have done a lot more interesting things with Ripley, her being a female. They do touch on that a little bit, but again, I'm sure they were just trying to go along and figure just getting something shot every day and just trying to get something done instead of having time to actually stop and think about how to take the best approach with that.
Yeah, I think, so the prison aspect and all that, and the color palette's very orange. There are a lot of it.
Yeah, I think it's a great looking film too. Like I like Aliens, really awesome film. The military stuff is really cool, but I like the feel of this film and like Alien better. Like, it just appeals to me more. Kind of, I don't know, there's just something about the look of both of these films that I like. I feel like Aliens maybe feels more almost like more saturated. It maybe pops a little bit more. It's got some really nice color to it, but I almost like the kind of I don't know, just the drab feel. And this film also kind of feels like almost like a Mad Max film, like post-apocalyptic in some ways. I don't know. It has a certain tone about it that I do like a lot. It's not like an exciting tone, like Aliens or something like that. But yeah, I really like the way this one looks as well and the way it's shot.
So Derek, what are your thoughts?
Not much. It's a movie. It's one that I've watched. It exists, and I probably will not revisit it.
Well,
I
like,
think I accidentally watched it and I was like, I don't know, at some point in my life. And I was
Have
like,
you seen Alien Resurrection lately?
yeah, and that's just, oh God.
See, I like that film too, but I'm an outlier.
No, here's the thing. Like,
I was wondering, how does this rate? That's what I'm wondering. What's your ranking as far as at least? Well, let's do those four and Prometheus. What's your ranking?
Almost rather watch a remake of Cabin Fever. But like, no, it's not that bad. But no, I mean, like, if I had to rank them, it would be like Aliens, Prometheus, then Alien, and then you could put the other two in the same because I don't value them very highly at all.
Yeah.
There's not much for this film that I like. I mean, I don't care for, you got Sigourney Weaver in it, and that's about it. But I think I fall in the category of I liked what I got in the second film. Then what I got in the third film was so drastically different. It just feels like, to me, it's like they just made a movie to make it because they had it, and that's what I got in this. It's like they had other stuff, and then they fell through. Like, you know what? We still got the rights. Let's just do it. Let's put this out there. And what they were selling, I'm not buying. It just went in a completely different way than I would like to have saw the franchise go, given how they had set up in the previous two films. Because they used to play in AMC all the time. They used to play the second, which is funny. They never played the first one. They always played the second and the third all the time. But there's not much about this film I even like. I don't like really any of the plot elements to it. I don't know. I mean, there's not much to it that even draws me to it, and I hate to be so harsh on it, but it's like, I really enjoy Aliens. I think I just suffer from, I like that one a lot more.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's I feel like a lot of people that are drawn to Aliens are like, I almost feel like that's, even though it's just such a strong and iconic entry into the franchise and is very much part of the Alien DNA, I almost feel like there are certain fans that are like, actually, I just like Aliens, because they like those other elements that aren't really in the rest of the films.
Well, too, Aliens laid the blueprint for so much of sci-fi that followed. Because like Halo, because I did a video a long time ago about how Halo pulled a lot from Aliens. Like the Marines looked the same, some of the characters even acted the same. The ships looked the same. Like, that was a huge cultural influence for a ton of people stylistically and filmmaking wise. And, of course, James Cameron's made the highest grossing film of all time twice in Titanic and Avatar. What's funny is looking through the production stuff. So one of the people who was a writer on that film at some point of Alien 3 was David Twohy. And he was the one that at one point had it, like when Rennie Harlan was still attached, of being on a prison planet. And he was the director of Pitch Black, the Vin Diesel movie where he has like the eyes that see in the dark. And even though he didn't end up being like one of the writers on the kind of the version they shot later, like visually, Pitch Black doesn't look all that dissimilar to Alien 3.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it's very similar.
Like, there's bald people. Imagine Vin Diesel's character in Alien 3, like the Riddick character.
It fit.
Apparently, though, that was supposedly that was Fincher. I guess if they were monks, they were going to be bald anyway. If that was at any time his version. But apparently, Fincher supposedly decided people were going to be bald with barcodes, and that Ripley was going to be bald as well,
which predated G.I. Jane by like 5 years.
Yeah, my wife actually asked. She's like, "Was this around the G.I. Jane era?"
Yeah, because that was like later in the 90s, like 97 or so, and this was 92. So, yeah, so you had like I think just the main thing that causes, like, I looked through the IMDb user reviews earlier, and a lot of them from like early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, and a lot of them are like 1 out of 10. And it's just basically the disconnect between what they expected to get based on Aliens and what they got. So that's not an uncommon problem to have with Alien 3. And
that's my problem with this.
And it's it's a valid criticism. Like, you have to kind of review the movie on its own merits. Like, how does it fare on its own? But I do get that so many people are just so disappointed by the fact that Alien was kind of a self-contained thriller horror film. Aliens expanded it out into sci-fi horror action. and like broadened the world up and brought more characters in. You saw more of the backstory on the aliens with the queen, and you had iconic lines like "Get away from her, you bitch," and all that stuff. I think that's the right quote. I always know that's one of the lines people misquote a bunch.
She definitely calls her a bitch.
Yeah. Is it "stay away from her" or "get away from her"? I remember that was like a thing from Scream 2 they talked about, if I remember correctly. But that's just like there's iconic stuff in that movie, and this one doesn't really have. It only has. Let's see. According to IMDb, it says "Get away from her, you bitch" is the quote. But the only iconic thing I can really remember from Alien 3 is the scene where Ripley's up against the wall and the alien kind of like gets up close and sniffs her, and then has like the little mouth come out.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is an iconic moment. But that's really the only moment that I remember from that movie that had cultural relevance beyond the movie itself.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that disconnect. Like Aliens was so huge, and like you said, I think it brought in another set of fans. And you've got this, and not that there's like a lot of diehard Alien defenders that are like all over Alien 3 trying to defend that. But yeah, I think it brought in a new audience probably. And when it didn't stay down that path, that's when people kind of, veered off. Like me personally, I like the minimal Alien approach. Like I like Aliens a whole lot, and I think that's a great film. But at the same time, like, I'm also on the side of like, yeah, it was kind of too many aliens. Like I don't know, because it was such a scary thing. And granted, they were military, they had weapons and stuff, but and I think that's why I kind of appreciate that the third one kind of goes back to trying to put the fear back into one alien.
Like I like the original Alien. I have but I guess what to me is like I hate the world they chose to build. Like I absolutely hate it. I hate all the characters. I hate the prison idea. I hate the color palette. I hate all of it. And it's like they could just maybe went back to more of the original in a better way than the shitty just can't think of anything way. It would have been better to me.
So like I think that the basic problem that I know like sounds like so you have and I have too, just like so the first film did what it did. It was an effective, scary film that hinted at some bigger questions with like the space jockey and some of the other stuff. And then like Ripley and the crew like exploring the alien ship and all that stuff. So that it, it had some stuff like that opened up the world of possibilities and kind of made you think about things. And then it brought it down. It was mostly just a horror film of a creature stalking people. It's kind of just a monster flick in a haunted house type setting in the ship. So it did that very effectively, but also had the other little tidbits sprinkled in that hinted at world building and all the Giger designs and all that stuff. So you had, and then like the egg and all that stuff. So you had all these iconic visual things in it that hinted at a larger world of mystery. The second film showed you some more of like that larger world and showed you the queen alien and the eggs and all that stuff. And then the third film only had one egg with one face hugger and one alien. And so it kind of constricted it down. It was all set in a prison, didn't really dive more into any of the alien mythology. It was supposed to, I think, dive more into the Weyland-Yutani corporation like background, but even then it's kind of minimal. And it's really just that they want these darn aliens for experimentation for biological weapons and such. So they really didn't get too far into that. Like, that corporation, like Weyland-Yutani, especially if you take into account the Aliens vs. Predator movies, which we shouldn't, that corporation makes a really huge amount of dumb decisions trying to get these freaking aliens. It's never going to work.
But, I mean, granted, I think, in Alien Resurrection, the Weyland-Yutani, they're no longer exist, right? Didn't they say they were bought out by Walmart or something?
It's been a while since
I think that's what they say in that film, because she's like worried about the company and it's a wholly different company now. But of course, they're like still into the same business essentially.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. And this one does, it tries to tell, I guess a smaller story and just kind of try to give you more tense moments. And instead it kind of just meanders, for like I said, after the first maybe hour or 45 minutes, there's not a lot that couldn't quickly be explained to somebody, you know, up until like the last half hour or so. And really, yeah, some of the characters start running together. You know, you're kind of like, okay, this person's killed, and there's not really any of the double crossing that comes into play, which I think that may have treaded too closely. You know, like I think that's smart. Like I think the thing I appreciate about this film is that it breaks pace. Like it still feels different enough than we're not on a spaceship anymore. I like that. And it's not aliens. Like I like that it's not a military shooter again. So I like that it at least attempts to give you something different while also kind of bringing back what I love about that series, because I am a fan of Alien more than I am of Aliens. But at the same time, yeah, it doesn't have its own story core, or even like you guys were mentioning, like enough iconic moments to really stand out. I enjoy this film, and I'd watch it again. But I was on my phone a lot during the middle arc of this movie, because it is a lot of them just running around and getting killed for a bit, and then being safe, and then getting killed some more. And the story isn't getting pushed forward, you know, like any other normal film, especially like a Fincher film, or Aliens. Alien, yeah, it is them getting picked off one by one, and some slow things get revealed at very, I think it's structured very well. That first film is. This one is kind of a little bit all over the place, and I think that's why they call it the special edition, because Fincher, you know, was not involved and wasn't signing off saying, "Oh, this is the director's cut," because I think it's so much probably of a mess. It's really hard to build something very strong out of what they got.
Well, this is something we talked about too with Marvel movies and just a lot of movies. When you get into your sequels, it's where do you go? What's next? And you look at Alien and Aliens. The difference is, like you said, a lot larger cast, way more aliens. It builds more in the world. You get there's so much that's in that, you know, difference between those two movies. It's like when you go to the third one, I think that there's probably a happy middle ground between the first two. And instead of trying to get into that sweet spot, they pumped the brakes all the way back up and caused like a 75-car pileup and killed 2 kids to get this movie. And it's like, no, I didn't like the pacing. I don't know. It's one of those movies, like once you get into it, I just remember like even watching it younger and like, you know, like the best way I can describe this movie in my mind is in Arrested Development season 4 when George Sr. meets Oscar's friends. He's like, I don't want these. And that's how I feel about this movie. Like, I don't want this, you know, and then that's like where I go. And I hate to be like, I feel like the past like 2-3 weeks have been like really down on movies. Cause like Suspiria is something I remember being better than it was when I watched it. Yeah. But with this, it was something I've never been hot on it. You know, I'm one of those people with like the Alien franchise. Like I really want to like the movies. Mm-hmm. It's just like they have an annoying laugh or something. I don't know what it is about them, because it's like, I love Aliens. Aliens very good. But then the other films, like I just run into a lot of issues with it. I just think that my biggest issue with this one is they went from such a small scale in the original, which is perfect. It worked. It was phenomenal. And you go to a much larger scale in the second, which also, again, worked phenomenally. You can't go – you have to find that – you either have to escalate it or de-escalate it to – a little bit of middle ground between the first two, not go all the way back to the ground you've already treaded in the first. I think,
too, something else the movie... Go ahead. Sorry.
This one just feels like to me like they just wanted to remake the first one in a different way, and it's like, no, you can't do that, guys. You got to get off of that. This is something different.
Something else this movie suffered from, which really wasn't a part of like... I mean, it was involved in the production, is that they had so much money been spent on this movie over the years trying to get made to begin with. They already spent enough money on it that probably made them reluctant to put the budget to it to make some of the concepts that would have maybe gave people what they wanted, the more expensive versions of this movie. Because, you know, being a more contained movie and like a mining prison colony, they probably already had a lot of backlot sets that they could use for those versus having to go out and create a bunch of ships and stuff like that that would be needed to, kind of go further down the road of aliens, or, like what Prometheus ended up being. So I just think for a lot of people, it's just, you already had this first film that was the tight thriller with Ripley and the alien. And then this movie does it again in a different location and things like that. So I think that, and it was David Fincher's first, big movie. And I think, like, didn't he kind of disown the movie when it was over, saying, like, so much was changed that...
From all I've heard, and he's not involved in the special features or anything.
Because he got pushed around and got stuff changed on him. And
I don't put this on him. Again, this is...
Well, obviously, he made Seven and a bunch of other, Zodiac, which are my favorite movies.
But like I said, this was his directorial debut, so...
Or his first, big budget.
He was 28 years old, too. And he directed commercials and music videos, and I think he worked for Industrial Light and Magic as like a visual effects camera op or something like that. I don't know.
So his first major film, he's going to get pushed around a little bit. So I don't put this on him. I just look at it like, I'm sure that the Alien films have been financially successful up to this point, so they wanted to get another one out. They didn't really have their ducks in a row. It just seems like to me they just put something out to get it out.
One of the producers was talking about, they were really reluctant to make it until they found out a good story. And then I think the director that was on before Fincher came to them, and he had a good story that they liked. They said like 2/3 of it they were like one was the monk wooden planet. They're like, but the other part about I can't remember two of them, but the one big element they like is that she was impregnated with an alien. And that is a thing I really do like about this, that this gives you something else that's not in those other two films where the alien won't kill her. And I think that's an interesting element, and they maybe don't play with that enough also, or quickly enough. Like, I think it should have been revealed. It probably gets revealed at an okay time, or maybe it should have been revealed a little bit earlier. And then there should have been more moments centered around that, because there's just not a lot for these people to do in this place other than just kind of run around. They set up a couple little plans, but that's about it.
Because the ultimate story to this movie is, because it does to some extent bring the story full circle and close it off with the character of Ripley. Granted, they walked that back when they made the next film, but the story is just like she can't get away from these aliens. Like, she encountered them once, and then she has to deal with them again in Aliens, and then once she survives that perilous trip, then she thought she saved Newt and all this stuff, and then the movie starts off and she's lost everything again, and these damn aliens are back that she has to contend with. So it's kind of like that's part of the story. And like from all three films, another through line is the company, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, wants the alien for research and for possible weapons or whatever type of use they have for it. So it's like this corporation, by prioritizing this over people's lives, results in people dying. So like it brought all this stuff kind of full circle to some extent with the way it ended, of her having the alien in her and just sacrificing herself so they can't get it. That did bring it full circle to some extent. Like, I just think they meandered a lot in the prison. They could have made the movie be...
Yeah.
Is like, so too, we watched the special edition, which is a little bit longer than the theatrical cut. And there's actually some terrible, terrible CGI in it, because it's footage they couldn't use from the original film that they then went back in and put CG in for the alien, which doesn't hold up.
No. I'm pretty sure that's the story on that. I should have went back and watched some clips from that. If I would have had time, I would have watched the theatrical also, just because I think I've only seen parts of that on TV, really. But yeah, like there's some things I like a lot about this. Some things that people don't like. Again, I like that Hicks and Newt were killed off in the beginning, only because I like the idea of them just kind of letting go of the previous film, and just kind of like, okay, this is a new story. This isn't a continuation. Like, I kind of like that, we're staying with Ripley, but it's not kind of chained to any of the other stuff, because I like Aliens just being its own little thing, because I like the different feel that they try to do for each of these films, and it's something I appreciate about them.
Well, it felt kind of too like, since, Alien 3 gets back into horror territory much more so than the prior film, it feels like what a lot of horror films did with like Friday the 13th or Halloween like 5, where they just kill off the protagonist of the prior film. So like Friday the 13th Part 2 killed off the survivor from the first film, Alice. Halloween 5 killed off the main like teen girl from the prior film. So like it goes into horror movie territory and does a horror movie thing that you see like in those sequels, but in a much quote unquote higher minded film being directed by David Fincher versus the fifth or sixth sequel in a slasher series, or granted with Friday the 13th it was the second film. So they just kind of do like a slasher movie type thing, and the movie does fit squarely in horror, like sci-fi horror. But I just think, like I said, I just think that basic disconnect. If you really wanted a sequel to Aliens and you watched this, and so if you're able to get over that, like I said too, over the years people probably let that be distanced a little bit from themselves. That disconnect of what they wanted versus what they got. So it's a little bit easier to review the movie on its own terms, I think, now a little bit. But
I actually, as much as I like that they got away from Newt and Hicks, like really, I think Newt probably would have allowed the audience to have another character to latch onto, because you really do. I mean, the doctor character, you like him, but then he gets killed pretty early on. But a lot of them, I could see a lot of people just thinking, oh, these are prisoners, screw them, but like if you had a little child running around,
gives you another audience
prison like this is another character for them to care about in other situations for for her to get into with the prisoners, with the alien, like that I think it needed something else there. So I think it just needed I don't know. There was just another thing it was missing as far as creating a lot of tension, because normally the prisoners were very much, as you said, just like a slasher film. It was just, you're just watching these people get knocked off. Well, it isn't the crew to the Nostromo that you're cared about, or the Marines, watching their comrades get killed. Like it's these prisoners you're introduced to, but you don't really have much connection to.
Well, and two, they have like a disorder. They have an extra chromosome that makes them predisposed to be more violent, which is like something that's not touched on a lot, but at least is part of the story. Yeah, so I mean, and two, they don't tell you specifically what all the prisoners did, but some of them are a little bit more crazy than others. And yeah, I mean, I do agree that if you had more of an audience surrogate that that you could care about or get invested, because once you find out that Ripley is has the alien inside of her, you essentially know it's just a countdown to her death. Like there's very few ways in that movie she would live, unlike like Prometheus, where they let a character live that got an alien inside of them because they had like that surgical pod thing. So you knew that it wasn't very likely that she's going to live. So like once you do that, then you kind of take some of the stakes out of it too. But it does kind of flip the script on what you're expecting out of it.
Yeah. I mean, like I like the ending, because even though maybe she knows it's still going to end poorly, like she has the option. They're like, hey, it's right on the ship over here. You can get that out of you. You'll be good to go in 2 hours. I like that she also still sacrifices like herself. I mean, maybe for the sweet release of death, but really just kind of for the greater good, like, she's like, no, I'm just taking this thing out with me. This is the end here. Like, I really like that. And that it feels, obviously it has way more weight to it than just an ending where it's like, okay, well, she kind of just, this story's over, because really, yeah, the story is so weak in this. If she wouldn't have killed herself in the end, in service of the greater good, and just kind of not letting Weyland Yutani get the alien, then yeah, this film would have been so much weaker. But I think for me, like, even though it lags a lot in the middle there, the ending really, really kind of does a lot to bring it up, and to having the Bishop cameo essentially. Like, I like that a lot. I love that when I saw that for the first time, because Bishop is one of my favorite characters in the in the entire series, really.
Yeah, and then they had him as like a prosthetic, like animatronic thing with voiceover.
That too, yes, yeah.
And then they actually brought him back as an actual character.
Yeah, which I love that. I love that little connection, because it's again, it's one little thing that's like, okay, this kind of this is kind of tying things up a little bit more. It's not a necessity here, but it just adds another layer. Where the middle of this film, it doesn't really expand the universe out, like you guys were mentioning. Like we're just kind of confined, but which would be fine if the circumstances or the scenes were very were like strongly constructed, but obviously they weren't because they didn't have a script and they were just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. But it's another thing I appreciate because everything he was up against, like I still kind of I still like this movie overall, which is a huge feat, and I'm sure I cut it way more slack because of that.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of go into giving what our scores are for the movie and what our reviews and final thoughts are. Because the IMDb user score is 6.4 out of 10. The Metacritic is 59. It's only from 20 scores. Like I said, until when you're looking at a lot of these like Metacritic scores, especially like after the movies have been out for a long time, it's not always the best comparison just because at the time, the tone and tenor of reviews are probably much different than today. Because at the time the movie came out, like 92, I wasn't as in tune with reading newspaper reviews of movies to know exactly what all the reviews of it were. Let's see, and then the Rotten Tomatoes score, once again, doesn't really account for all the reviews that came out at the time. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 44%. So the scores on this movie overall tend to skew like kind of mixed to negative on the online reviews. So I guess we'll start with Derek to get his review. So what score do you give this?
Let me tell you this. I like tacos and I like fish. And I don't like fish tacos. And this is a fish taco. So it's getting a 2 out of 10.
Ooh. So in line with a lot of those IMDb reviews that are on there that are kind of like at the top of the user reviews. Like one of them says, an abomination of near epic proportions. So
I do not think this film is an abomination.
No,
That's his opinion. That's his opinion. But it's like an abomination, really. Like you can call it boring, really, but it's not.
I just think what happened. I think this film suffers from having. This is the third movie in a franchise.
Yeah.
And just history tells us the third movie in a franchise is always the worst. There's very few franchises that have existed that the third one is worth anything. In the past couple of years, you just this year you had Logan, which is the best. Then you had Captain America: Civil War, which was probably the best out of the three. And I could probably come up with a couple of other examples, but those are just the two that stick out in my head. I think those are really good third movies. This is not that. This is your stereotypical third Hollywood movie. I mean, it's
because you have some stuff like, and two, this was an attempt to kind of wrap the franchise up for, to some extent. So like, you have like Star Wars Return of the Jedi that overall people like it, but I don't think it's the best movie in that franchise by far, or the original
the Ewoks,
movies.
And it probably could have been the best.
But yeah, so then like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I think is a movie that a lot of people is their favorite out of the series. I think it's a very enjoyable movie, and I enjoy it just about as much as Raiders. Raiders Lost Ark is the better movie, but I could see how somebody gets more enjoyment out of Last Crusade because it's a little bit more fun, it's a little bit more goofy, things like that. So this, I think, there's, and two, like you take into fact, so Neil Blomkamp, the Alien movie that he was wanting to get made, essentially was going to overwrite Alien 3 and Resurrection. And there's a lot of people that were okay with that. A lot of people are okay with that and excited about that. So I think that tells you a lot. Like with Alien 3, I think that with all the stuff that went into the pre-production and all that, it's always more, to me, it's just more upsetting to know what the movie could have been versus what it was. But that's, a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's life.
Well, especially with this one, because there wasn't like a plan that just fell up. Like there was a plan, but it wasn't like the director had a vision. They had a script they all loved, and they were going to go ahead for it, and they prepped, and things just didn't work out. This was like set up to fail from the beginning.
Well,
as far as like day one when Fincher started.
Yeah, I want to use I'm sorry for doing this, another Arrested Development thing, because there's an episode where they build a house, but they never intend to build a real house. They just want to build a fake house.
A facade.
And this is what this is. This is that, like, this creation, this movie is that episode. Like, they just
but nobody
created
told
that fake house.
Fincher, so he shot the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, he didn't know that he was just building the walls and the roof. He didn't know he's not doing anything on the inside.
I mean, and two,
You know, where
go ahead.
not anything to say.
But yeah, so like what you see with this movie is that, like with David Fincher, like giving it an honest effort and all that stuff, that's different than I'm trying to think. There's other movies where they take like a music video director or a less experienced director and give them a big project. So going back to like the X-Men or Wolverine stuff, X-Men Origins Wolverine was directed by a director that was like from small indie background and got pushed around the big film. The final product wasn't what they wanted, and the movie, although it made decent money, was critically reviled, and it kind of hurt the image of that character and all that stuff. Then you've had other instances where that happens of kind of smaller indie director or music video director or somebody that doesn't have a ton of experience gets put on a big project and then gets kind of buckled under the pressure of the studio, who are worried about their bottom line and not actually caring about the product they're making while they're making it. And you see that a lot. And then you've seen in recent times like that actually worked out for studios, like Jurassic World took Colin Trevorrow, who made a small indie film, and gave him a big budget movie that made a ton of money. And there's been a few other ones where they have been successful with that. Like Marvel's been pretty good about that, about taking lesser known directors who haven't had big hits and getting them to have success. So it's more of a recent thing where it's worked out well for people. But this movie was one.
I mean, Ridley Scott, he had done what, one or two films, small films before too,
Yeah, I mean, too, like the Alien when it came out wasn't a huge budget film.
Yeah.
It was a movie that became a classic, but that I think Star Wars being successful gave him more confidence in the kind of space setting and things like that.
Yeah, and blockbusters weren't as really much of a thing back then. There was,
you had like Jaws and Star Wars, but
they were sparingly coming out, and they weren't like set up to be a blockbuster.
But so going back to Alien 3, like you can see like David Fincher, you can see there was good visuals in it and good performances and things like that. Just to me, the story wasn't there to make it something I want to go back to. Mm-hmm. So it's it's all very competently done and all that. It's just the story doesn't get me. So like looking at the scores, like I think like a 5.5 is probably I give it. Like it's not like a terribly made movie or anything. It's just I think if I wanted to get what this movie does, I'll just watch Alien instead of watching this one. I mean, I don't. At this point, as an adult, I don't hate it like I did when I was a kid. I just see it as a missed opportunity for what could have been. And, like I said, I mean, Sigourney Weaver's great in it, things like that. And there is a little bit of resolution there. It just wasn't what I wanted out of the movie. And there wasn't really much tension or scares, really, because you don't really care about many of the prisoners. Yeah. And they only really get fleshed out kind of at the end. And, the characters you kind of like, Charles Dance, they humanize him and then immediately kill him. So you really only have Ripley to hold on to. Then once you find out she's an alien in her, then it's just kind of like the stakes are kind of gone for the most part. But
yeah, because the alien isn't going to kill her, but you know what I mean? But then she's got an alien in her. So, and it's the queen. The thing too, like if it wasn't Fincher, like I probably wouldn't have went back and looked at this more closely, years ago when I got the quadrilogy and stuff, because I just liked seeing how his style has changed a little bit and some of the similar things too. And just seeing how he maybe even he constructed some of these sequences, like knowing he basically had no planning at all, so there's just stuff I appreciate on that level, just to see how things turned out. But I do like you mentioned, like watching this film, I was thinking about like, this is actually kind of the Alien trilogy, because 4 was just, it was almost like they did pull them all again because they just clone her and bring her back. So it's like with this intent, looking at it as 3 films, obviously this could have been better constructed. But I do like the kind of flow of that original trilogy and telling Ripley's story before she dies. I mean, the original Ripley, of this first film where she's introduced to it, the second one where she's in the middle, and then the third one where it's kind of she's put in a bad situation. She's all alone again, essentially. And then she has to sacrifice herself. You know, on a smaller, when you kind of go at about that way, like that's a really good little story. But yeah, there's just too much dead weight, I think, in this film. But again, like I'm kind of weird because I like all four of those Alien films. And I wouldn't be down on anybody for really not liking this one or four. But I would probably give this one like a 6.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd probably go a 6.5. It's weird because there's things I really like about the aesthetic of it and just kind of the feel. And I like that they return to that kind of just dour feeling. And there's not really, I mean, there's dumb catchphrases in Aliens. You know what I mean? Like it's a crowd pleaser in that regard. And it's really fun. And I like that. But at the same time, it's not what I love about the Alien films. But then again, 4 is so goofy. I also love how weird that film gets. So I kind of like the different shifts and tones in this series.
And that was the fourth one was Joss Whedon was involved in writing that and didn't like how it came out. So that's just a franchise that had a couple entries where people that would go on to become huge names had an end product they weren't that happy with.
Yeah. I watched 4 like not that long ago. Like I liked that movie.
If you look at the box office for all these movies, just real quick before you end all this, the box office order, not based on inflation, just the actual grosses in the U.S. So it's Prometheus with 126 million, Aliens with 85 million, Alien versus, I'm not going to include the Alien versus Predator films.
No.
Then the next is Alien with 78 million, Alien 3 with 55 million, and Resurrection with 47 million. If you adjust it for inflation, then it's Aliens, and Prometheus, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection. And if you look at the worldwide unadjusted, which isn't really a fair comparison because movies are far more marketed on a worldwide scale today than they were in like the 80s and 70s, then it'll be Prometheus, then Alien Resurrection, Alien 3, Aliens, and Alien. So the adjusted for ticket price inflation, Alien, Aliens, and Prometheus, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection, that's an ordering I wouldn't hate of the series, but... Like I said, I go back and forth on Alien and Aliens, which one I like more at the time. But yeah, so it's just interesting at the box office numbers and see how Alien Covenant does when it comes out soon.
Yeah, we'll wait a while, but I definitely want to get around to Resurrection because, again, Winona Ryder's in that. And she is another character you really care about. You know what I mean? Like, that was a good thing about that. Like, you immediately are gravitated towards her, or at least I am, maybe just because I like Winona Ryder. But I like that crew, and there's very strong characters, you know, as far as having identities. Ron Perlman, like you know these characters, and then when they die, it matters way more than in this film. But that film's also really goofy and way over the top and almost like a cartoon version of Alien. But yeah, so
then you played Alien Isolation, right?
Yeah, but not all of it. Okay. I only played like the first half of it, really.
And then Derek, you didn't play that at all, right?
No, I didn't play it.
So that's a game that I would recommend checking out. I enjoyed it, especially now that it's cheaper. It's just kind of like a haunted house game where like the alien stalking you and stuff. That has some incredibly tense moments and actually made the alien kind of scary just because it could just kill you. And it was
it's not an aliens game. It's an alien
there's
game.
A singular alien and there's some androids you have to deal with, but
and you play as Ripley's daughter, right?
Yes. So that's something you can check out, that if you want an Aliens fix that's interactive and not like the action games or the terrible Colonial Marines game they made a few years back. So you can check out Alien Isolation, which I enjoyed.
I was playing some of Alien Trilogy and Alien Resurrection on PS1 probably 3 months ago. Not great, but they're still Alien properties, so...
They're games.
They're games.
Yep, so that'll bring our discussion of Alien 3 to a close. And if you're enjoying the podcast, you can do us a huge favor. Go out and leave a review in iTunes. It helps other people find the podcast, helps us move up the charts and be more visible, so that would be much appreciated. You can also always send us an email at podcast@housebythevideostore.com. You can also
send us an email about anything, literally anything you want, any questions. You know, if you want to know Derek's like sexual fetishes or just anything at all, just Send it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, so send us questions. We'll answer them on the podcast.
Speaking of horror.
Yeah. And then we also enjoy seeing comments on YouTube. It's always good to see feedback there because people do find the podcast there over time. You can find all the work we're doing at housebyvideostore.com. You can find links there to all our social media accounts, so make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Those are most the important places to follow us. But you can find links to all of them at housebyvideostore.com. If you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at will_droid.
You can find me pretty much on everything at MetaWorld Derek.
And I'm at Splevin Sean on Twitter.
Yep, and that will bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.